He explained the rules to her on her first day. Never open the locked door at the end of the hall. Never speak his name unless spoken to. And never, under any circumstance, let him see you cry. But tonight, as the clock struck midnight, Sheila stood in the forbidden hallway. Her heart pounding so loud she feared the whole mansion could hear. Donald Turner, the man every servant whispered about, watched her from the shadows, his blue eyes cold, hungry, daring her to break another rule. Sheila's breath hitched. She had crossed every line, and now she saw the truth in his gaze. He wanted her. He wanted everything she was supposed to keep hidden. But would loving him destroy them both? Welcome to Mr. Leonardo's Stories. Whether you're new or returning, thank you for being here. You're about to experience a story full of forbidden longing, broken rules, and a love powerful enough to change two lives forever. If you love stories that push limits and touch your heart, subscribe now so you don't miss a moment. Drop a comment below. Would you risk everything for a love you're told to avoid? Let's get started. Sheila had always known fear, but nothing compared to the sight of the Turner mansion on her first morning. The city bus dropped her at the front gate, its engine rumbling away, as she dragged her faded suitcase past rows of perfect rose bushes. The mansion towered above her, a sharp-edged monument to a world she had only glimpsed in magazines, a world of marble, glass, and secrets. Every window glittered with silent warnings. Every stone promised she didn't belong. She had dressed carefully, a crisp white blouse, black slacks borrowed from her cousin, shoes polished until her fingers ached. She clutched a letter of employment, hands trembling as she rang the bell. The doors swung open before she could collect herself. Jenny, the head maid, stood in the entry, mid-50s, salt and pepper hair pulled into a severe bun, eyes that missed nothing. Her presence filled the hallway as much as the faint scent of lemon polish. "You're early," Jenny said without smiling. She scanned Sheila from head to toe, measuring, weighing, as if deciding how much trouble this new girl would bring. "Follow me. Walk quickly. Mr. Turner expects the staff to be invisible, not slow." Sheila nodded, swallowing a knot in her throat. As she followed Jenny, her heels clicked across marble floors. Sunlight streamed through enormous windows, reflecting off crystal vases and polished brass. Sheila tried not to gawk at the paintings, portraits of unsmiling ancestors, landscapes that seemed colder than real life. "Listen closely," Jenny continued, leading her through a corridor lined with bookshelves. "There are rules in this house. You keep your voice down. You do not enter the East Wing unless you're asked. If Mr. Turner is in a room, you leave unless he speaks to you first. Never enter the study at the end of the East Hall. Understood?" Sheila nodded again, grateful for clear instructions. Jenny opened a door. "This is your room. Breakfast is at 6, lunch at 12, and dinner at 7. Don't be late. Uniforms in the closet, schedule on the nightstand." She pointed to a tidy bed, a small dresser, and a single window overlooking the servants' garden. "It's nice," Sheila said softly. Jenny's eyes softened for the first time. "It's safe. Do your job, and you'll keep it that way." After Jenny left, Sheila unpacked her meager belongings, a framed photo of her mother, a worn notebook, 3 neatly folded shirts, and a small wooden cross she'd carried since childhood. She took a moment to breathe, pressing her palm to her chest as if she could steady her heartbeat. Her mother had always said, "Work hard, keep your head down, and never forget who you are." It was why Sheila came here, why she took this job after the last one ended in tears and lost wages. This place, she hoped, would be different. By the time she buttoned her uniform, the sun was fully up. Her first assignment, polish the Grand Library. She'd never seen a room so vast. Rows of mahogany shelves rose to the ceiling, filled with leather-bound books that smelled of dust and history. A grand piano gleamed in one corner, and heavy drapes blocked the morning light. She set to work, moving quietly from shelf to shelf. She dusted each book, careful not to disturb their order, and wiped down the piano keys with a soft cloth. Her hands moved with practiced skill. Cleaning was the one thing in life that made sense. Every mess had a solution. Every surface could shine again. Halfway through, she heard footsteps. She turned, expecting another staff member, but stopped cold. Donald Turner stood in the doorway. He was younger than she expected, mid-30s, tall, broad-shouldered, with hair so dark it nearly matched the suit he wore. His blue eyes were sharp, unreadable, set beneath a furrowed brow. He looked like someone born into authority, yet burdened by it. Sheila quickly bowed her head. "Good morning, sir." He didn't answer right away. He watched her, every movement measured, as if he were deciding what to do with an unwelcome stray. "You're the new maid?" "Yes, sir," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do not touch the desk," he said, pointing to a heavy oak structure in the corner, "and leave the books as you find them." "Yes, sir," she echoed, heart pounding. He moved to the window, looking out over the gardens for a long moment before speaking again. "What's your name?" "Sheila." He nodded once, briskly, and left without another word. She let out a shaky breath, aware of the tension in her shoulders only after he was gone. The staff had warned her. Mr. Turner was exacting. Some said he could fire a person with a look. Others said worse. As the day wore on, Sheila slipped into the rhythm of the house. She learned the routines by watching who arrived first in the kitchen, who polished the silver, and how Jenny kept the laundry running like clockwork. She greeted other staff with polite smiles, Maria, the cook, who hummed love songs while kneading dough, Charles, the gardener, always tracking mud on the tiles, Lila, another young maid who offered a shy wave. At lunch, Sheila sat at the far end of the staff table, listening more than she spoke. The others traded stories about Donald Turner's moods, his strictness, his rare moments of warmth. "He's not cruel, just distant," Maria said as she passed the bread. "His father was worse." Jenny kept her eye on Sheila all afternoon. "Some advice," she said, catching Sheila in the hall. "Don't ask questions, don't get involved, do your work, and don't try to figure out Mr. Turner. He's got rules for a reason." But Sheila's curiosity flickered despite herself. Every time she saw Donald, crossing the hall, reading in the study, speaking, in clipped tones to his business partner, she felt a strange pull. There was something restless in his eyes, like a storm trapped behind glass. After dinner, she was sent to deliver towels to the East Wing. The hall was silent, the light softer here. Family portraits stared down, watching her every step. At the end, the forbidden study. Door was closed, its dark wood gleaming. She hesitated, fighting the urge to listen for sounds inside, but forced herself to move on. That night, she sat on her bed, exhaustion threatening to pull her under. She opened her notebook and scribbled a line, "New job, keep your head down. Don't get noticed." But already, she knew it wouldn't be so simple. The next day, routine blurred into habit. Sheila dusted, scrubbed, and swept, learning the quiet language of the house. Sometimes she glimpsed Donald in the halls, expression unreadable. Once, she caught him alone in the dining room, staring at an old photograph, a younger version of himself, with a proud, stern man and a woman with cold eyes. The sadness on his face disappeared the second he noticed Sheila, replaced by his usual mask. One afternoon, as she was polishing the silver in the dining room, Donald entered unexpectedly. He watched her for a moment, then spoke. "Why did you take this job?" She hesitated, not sure if it was a test. "I needed work, sir, and I want to save money for school." He nodded, almost as if approving, then left without further questions. That night, as rain tapped against her window, Sheila lay awake, thinking of home, her mother's sacrifices, the promise she made to make something better of herself, the feeling of always being on the outside, looking in. She got up quietly, wandering the servants' corridor. The house was never truly silent. Pipes creaked, clocks ticked, distant voices murmured in the main hall. She paused by the back stairs and saw a faint light coming from the library. Drawn by curiosity, she peeked inside. Donald sat at the grand piano, playing softly, notes drifting through the darkness, sad and lovely. Sheila watched, transfixed. He played as if no one was listening, and for the first time, he looked less like a master and more like a man in mourning. When the last note faded, he looked up, spotting her in the shadows. Neither spoke. After a long moment, Donald closed the piano lid and stood. "Can't sleep?" he asked, voice gentle for once. She shook her head, caught between apology and admiration. He nodded toward the hall. "Get some rest. Tomorrow will be harder." Sheila slipped away, but his music followed her down the corridor. Over the next week, small patterns emerged. Donald was strict, but not cruel. He never raised his voice, never tolerated gossip. He expected perfection, but sometimes left small kindnesses in his wake. A cup of tea left out for Maria, a word of encouragement to Lila. One morning, as Sheila was arranging flowers in the entryway, she heard Donald's mother arrive, her heels striking the floor like a warning. The staff tensed, straightening their uniforms. Mrs. Turner was tall, silver-haired, and sharp-eyed, with a smile that never reached her eyes. She barely glanced at Sheila. "New help, Jenny?" Jenny nodded. "She's quick and quiet." "Let's hope she stays that way," Mrs. Turner replied, sweeping past. After she left, Jenny whispered, "She's the real master of this house. Stay out of her way." That afternoon, a mistake nearly cost Sheila everything. While dusting the gallery, she accidentally knocked a vase off a side table. It shattered on the polished floor. Her heart froze, panic surging as she scrambled to gather the pieces. Before she could finish, Donald appeared. He knelt beside her, inspecting the mess. "I'm sorry, sir," Sheila whispered. "It was an accident." He watched her quietly, then spoke in a low voice. "Don't hide mistakes, fix them." He helped her sweep up the shards, then dismissed her with a nod. Back in her room, Sheila cried silent tears of relief. Jenny found her there and put a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You survived your first storm. You'll be fine." But Sheila sensed things would only get harder. Every day brought new challenges, fears, small victories, new rules to learn. Still, something inside her shifted. Each time she passed Donald in the hall, she saw the same longing in his eyes that she felt in her chest. Each night, she remembered the way he played the piano, the sadness that lingered long after the music ended. One evening, as the sun set in streaks of gold and purple, Sheila paused, by the forbidden hallway, drawn by a feeling she couldn't explain. She pressed her palm to the cool wood of the study door. On the other side, she heard nothing, but she felt everything. Rules, secrets, desires waiting to be named. Sheila promised herself she would follow the rules. But deep down, she wondered how long she'd be able to obey. She was already part of a world that didn't belong to her. And somewhere in the silence, she suspected, someone was watching and waiting for her to break just one more rule. Sheila learned quickly that the Turner mansion was less a home and more a living monument to pride and pain. Each day sharpened her senses, teaching her when to move and when to vanish. Donald Turner drifted through the halls like a ghost, never raising his voice, never lingering in any one place except the library, the study, and sometimes, late at night, the garden beneath the oldest oak. Sheila's days began before sunrise. She polished silver and swept endless stairs, her body moving on instinct, her mind drifting to old dreams, school, escape, a life where she didn't flinch at every sound. The staff kept to themselves. Even Lila, who had seemed friendly at first, now offered only cautious smiles, as if afraid of breaking some invisible law. It was in these quiet hours that Sheila noticed Donald's patterns. He was never cruel, but he was precise, demanding silence at breakfast, expecting flawless work, tolerating no lateness. His presence set the tone of the house. A single word from him could send the staff scattering or bring them to a halt. And yet, there were moments, small and almost secret, when his mask slipped. Once, Sheila caught a glimpse of Donald through the half-open study door, bent over a box of old photographs, his hand trembling as he traced the edge of a faded picture. She lingered just a second too long, and he looked up. For a heartbeat, his eyes were open and wounded before the shutters slammed down again. On another afternoon, as thunder rolled outside, Sheila was sent to collect laundry from the guest rooms. As she passed Donald's suite, she heard voices, his and a woman's, sharp and tense. "You can't keep living like this, Don," the woman said. "Father wouldn't have wanted it." "I'm not interested in what Father wanted," Donald replied, his tone icy. "Leave it alone, Marion." Sheila froze, breath held. The voices faded, and footsteps echoed toward the stairs. She ducked into a side hall just as Marion, a woman in her 40s with Donald, his eyes and stubborn chin, swept past, her face set with frustration. Later, as Sheila folded linens in the laundry room, Lila joined her, speaking softly. "That was his sister. She comes to check on him every month. Always ends in an argument." Sheila kept her questions to herself. But inside, she was piecing together a puzzle, a family broken, a son still haunted by a father's memory. That evening, as the house settled into silence, Sheila lingered in the kitchen, hands deep in soapy water. Donald entered quietly, surprising her. He didn't speak at first, only poured himself a glass of water and leaned against the counter, watching the rain beat against the windows. Sheila dried her hands on her apron. "Long day, sir." Donald's lips twitched in something close to a smile. "They're all long. Some are just quieter." She took a breath. "Your sister seems worried about you." His eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in appraisal. "You're observant." "I try to be," she said, feeling bold and terrified all at once. He nodded, looking away. "Worry is a waste of time. People look at you and think they know the story. They rarely do." Sheila hesitated, then spoke quietly. "People said things about me too. Before I came here." Donald studied her, something softer in his gaze. "Did you believe them?" "No," she said, voice steady. "I know who I am." He seemed to consider that, and for a moment, Sheila felt a strange kinship, a silent agreement between survivors. The next morning, Donald was waiting in the library when Sheila entered to dust. He held a stack of letters, his expression unreadable. "I need these organized," he said, gesturing to the papers. "Don't read them. Just put them in order by date." Sheila nodded, careful not to look too curious. As she worked, she couldn't help noticing the neat, cramped handwriting, many addressed to Donald's father. Some never opened. The letters smelled faintly of tobacco and regret. Donald watched her work. "You're quieter than most," he said. "I was taught not to make noise," Sheila replied, sorting the envelopes with practiced hands. He didn't respond, but he didn't leave either. Instead, he sat at the grand piano, running his fingers over the keys without playing. The silence was heavy, but not uncomfortable. After a while, he spoke again. "What did you want before you came here?" Sheila paused, surprised by the question. "I wanted to be a nurse, help people. My mother got sick, and I had to take care of her. After she died, there wasn't money for school." Donald nodded slowly, as if the words mattered. "Sometimes we have to choose survival over dreams." Sheila set the last letter in place. "I haven't given up, sir. I'm just waiting." He watched her, a hint of something warm in his eyes. "Don't wait too long. The world doesn't hand out second chances." Before she could reply, he stood and left the room. Days passed, and the seasons shifted. Autumn wind rattled the windows, scattering golden leaves across the gardens. The house felt colder, both in temperature and mood. Mrs. Turner was always present now, inspecting every corner, her judgments silent but heavy. One afternoon, Sheila found Donald in the garden, staring up at the oak tree that dominated the lawn. She nearly turned back, but he gestured for her to stay. "My father planted this tree the year I was born," he said quietly. "He said it would grow as tall as his legacy." I hated that word, legacy. It's just a way to hold someone hostage to the past. Sheila listened, sensing this was not a story he shared often. "Do you miss him?" she asked, careful. Donald was silent a long time. He was a hard man. He wanted perfection, never mistakes. "When he died, I felt free and guilty for feeling that way." Sheila nodded. "You're allowed to feel both." He glanced at her, a flicker of gratitude in his expression. Later, in the staff quarters, Lila whispered, "He never talks to anyone like that." "What did you say to him?" Sheila shook her head, unsure. Maybe she had simply listened. Maybe that was enough. That night, a storm rattled the house. Sheila couldn't sleep. She wandered downstairs, drawn again to the library. There, in the flickering lamplight, Donald sat with a bottle of whiskey and an old journal. He didn't hear her at first. Sheila hovered at the door, debating whether to disturb him. He looked up, surprised, but didn't send her away. "Can't sleep?" he asked, echoing their earlier exchange. "No," she admitted. He gestured to a chair. "Sit, if you want." She did, careful to keep her hands in her lap. Donald poured her a glass of water, sliding it across the table. He stared at the journal, then spoke softly. "This was my father's. He wrote everything, numbers, names, grievances. I used to sneak in and read it, hoping to find something that explained him. I never did." Sheila glanced at the pages. Maybe he was just trying to make sense of his life, too. Donald snorted, a bitter edge to his smile. He wanted control, over the house, over me, over everything. Sheila studied his profile, strong but tired. "Did you ever wish things could be different?" He met her gaze, a raw honesty there, every day. "But wishing doesn't change anything. Actions do." She nodded, understanding more than she wanted to admit. Silence settled between them, thick and strangely comforting. For the first time, Sheila felt as if she belonged, not just to the house, but to its hidden hurts and hopes. Before she left, Donald spoke again, voice barely above a whisper. "If you ever need anything, come to me. Don't hide." Sheila left with a heart that felt both heavier and lighter than before. In the days that followed, their connection grew in quiet ways. A shared glance across the dining room. Donald lingering a moment longer when he passed Sheila in the hall. Conversations that started about chores and ended with confessions. But not everyone was blind to the change. Mrs. Turner watched them with new suspicion. Jenny offered warnings in whispers. "Be careful, Sheila. The master's heart is a dangerous thing. Don't be the reason he breaks his own rules." Sheila promised herself she'd be careful. She would not risk everything. Not for a man, not for a job. But each day, the mansion felt less like a cage and more like a crossroads. And each time she saw Donald, guard down, eyes open, quietly hurting, she felt her resolve slipping, little by little. Outside, the autumn leaves fell faster, wind curling them into golden drifts. Inside, two lonely souls moved closer together, bound by silence, secrets, and the hope that maybe, this time, it was safe to want more. Sheila didn't realize how much she was changing until the others began to notice. It was in the small things, the way she stood a little taller, the way she no longer startled at every sound, the way her eyes followed Donald without fear. The staff whispered more now, their voices carrying through the kitchens and corridors, mixing suspicion with envy. "She's getting too close," Lila murmured one evening, as they folded napkins in the pantry. "She'll get herself fired," Maria replied, more worried than cruel. Sheila pretended not to hear. She worked harder, faster, hoping her diligence would drown out the attention. But the mansion itself seemed to notice her, drawing her deeper with every passing day. Donald grew bolder, too. He would find her in quiet corners, offering small tasks, then lingering for conversation. Once, he asked for her opinion on new flowers for the garden. Another time, he stood beside her in the dining room, discussing books instead of business. "You read a lot," he observed as she arranged a vase. "What's your favorite?" Sheila hesitated. "Anything with hope in it. Stories where people find their way, even when the world tries to stop them." Donald's lips quirked. "Hope is dangerous. It makes people believe change is possible." She met his eyes, emboldened by the warmth there. "Is that so terrible?" He didn't answer, but he didn't look away either. One afternoon, the house prepared for an important dinner. Investors and family friends would be attending, and Mrs. Turner was relentless in her inspections. The staff raced to polish silver and set tables, nerves frayed by her sharp criticism. Jenny cornered Sheila in the hallway. "Tonight is crucial. Stay invisible. No mistakes." Sheila nodded, pressing her lips together. But as the evening unfolded, she found herself drawn into the orbit of the guests. Donald was a perfect host, charming, composed, never letting his mask slip. But Sheila saw the strain in his jaw, the tension in his shoulders. During the meal, she noticed a guest speaking to Donald in low, urgent tones. Donald's expression darkened, and for a moment, anger flashed in his eyes. Sheila passed behind him, pouring wine, and heard a snatch of their conversation. "You're letting the staff get too comfortable. The house is losing its discipline." Donald's reply was a low growl. "My house, my rules." The guest scowled. "Your father would be ashamed." Donald stiffened, but said nothing more. The room grew colder. Later, as the guests filed out and the staff began cleaning up, Sheila found Donald alone on the terrace, looking out at the dark garden. She hesitated at the door, unsure if she was welcome. "Come in," he said quietly, not turning around. She stepped onto the terrace, folding her arms against the chill. "Rough night?" He nodded. "Family always makes it worse. They don't see the point in change. They want things the way they've always been." Sheila looked at him, searching for the right words. "But you're not your father." He finally turned, eyes raw and unguarded. "No, I'm not." A silence settled between them, thick with things unsaid. "Why do you stay?" Donald asked, surprising her. "You could work anywhere. Why here?" She took a deep breath, heart pounding. "Because I need this, the money, the chance to save for school, but also—" She hesitated, realizing the truth as she spoke it. "I want to see if I can fit somewhere I never thought I belonged." Donald's gaze softened. "You do belong, Sheila, more than you know." She felt heat rise in her cheeks. "It doesn't always feel that way." He looked at her for a long time, as if searching for something familiar in her face. "You remind me of someone I used to know, someone who wasn't afraid to speak her mind." Sheila smiled, nerves dissolving. "Maybe you need more of that around here." He gave a low laugh, real and surprising. "Maybe I do." A sudden noise from inside, the clatter of a dropped tray followed by a raised voice, broke the moment. Donald straightened, the mask sliding back into place. "I should get back," Sheila said, reluctant to leave. He nodded, stepping closer. "Sheila, if anyone gives you trouble, you come to me. Do you understand?" She nodded, heart thudding. As she walked away, Jenny appeared, eyes sharp. "Be careful. The walls have ears, and so do the guests." Sheila nodded, not trusting herself to speak. The days that followed were tense. The staff grew more distant, their suspicion sharpened by rumors. Mrs. Turner summoned Sheila to her sitting room, a rare event that set everyone on edge. Sheila entered quietly, hands clasped, eyes low. Mrs. Turner regarded her over the rim of a teacup. "You're causing quite a stir, Sheila. The staff are uneasy. My son is distracted." Sheila swallowed hard. "I'm only doing my job, ma'am." Mrs. Turner's lips thinned. "Do it quietly, then. There are lines in this house. I trust you won't cross them." Sheila nodded, feeling the sting of accusation. That night, she found herself in the garden, unable to sleep. The air was cool, the sky clear and wide. She sat beneath the old oak, arms around her knees, wishing for the strength to keep going. She didn't hear Donald approach until he sat beside her, leaving space but not distance. "I heard about my mother," he said. "She likes to test people." Sheila shook her head. "She wants to protect you. She doesn't trust me." "She doesn't trust anyone," he replied. "But she's right about one thing. There are lines that shouldn't be crossed." They sat in silence, side by side, the night alive with crickets and distant city sounds. "Sheila," Donald said softly, "what do you want?" She hesitated, startled by the question. "I want to stop running. I want to feel safe. I want someone to see me, really see me, and not just what I do." He reached for her hand, hesitant at first. When their fingers touched, the world felt charged, electric, dangerous, full of promise. "I see you," he whispered. She squeezed his hand, pulse racing. He turned, looking down at her. Their faces were inches apart. For a moment, neither spoke. Donald leaned in slowly, his breath warm against her cheek. "Tell me to stop," he murmured. Sheila's answer was a whisper. "Don't stop." He kissed her, soft at first, searching, then deeper, as if he'd been holding back a lifetime of longing. She melted into him, heart breaking open. When they finally parted, Donald cupped her face in his hands, eyes shining. "This changes everything," he said. She nodded, tears blurring her vision. Not from fear, but from hope. "Let it," she whispered. A distant door slammed inside the house, pulling them back to reality. Donald stood, helping her to her feet. "Go inside. Tomorrow will be difficult." Sheila nodded, but this time she walked with her head high. Inside, she faced Jenny, whose eyes softened for the first time. "Love is never easy here. Be sure it's worth the cost." Sheila lay awake that night, replaying every moment, every word, every touch. She knew the risks, the dangers, the rules she had already broken. But for the first time in her life, she didn't care. She had been seen, chosen, cherished. And nothing, no warning, no wall, would ever make her hide again. Sheila woke the next morning with Donald's kiss still burning on her lips. The world looked different, brighter, sharper, filled with hope and dread in equal measure. She kept her head down as she dressed, heart racing with every step through the quiet corridors. It felt as if the walls themselves were listening for her secret, eager to expose what she and Donald had done. The staff avoided her, their voices dropping when she entered a room. Lila barely met her eyes. Maria, usually so warm, pressed her lips together and turned away. Jenny, too, seemed distant, busying herself with chores that didn't need doing. Even the house felt changed, tense, charged, waiting for a spark. Donald, meanwhile, kept his distance during the day. He was in and out of meetings, his footsteps echoing down the marble. Halls, never lingering long enough for more than a glance or a word. But his gaze found Sheila every chance it could. A shared look at breakfast, a brush of fingers in the hallway, a pause on the stairs, just long enough for the air between them to tremble. By evening, the house quieted. Rain tapped against the windows. Sheila found herself summoned to the study, the forbidden room at the end of the east wing. Jenny handed her a stack of fresh towels. "He wants you to deliver these," she said, her eyes searching Sheila's face for a sign of fear or hesitation. Sheila nodded and walked the long, hushed hallway. Her palms grew damp. The door loomed ahead, dark and heavy. She knocked gently. "Come in," Donald's voice called, deeper and softer than she'd ever heard. She stepped inside, nerves prickling. The study was grand but cold, its shelves lined with dusty tomes, the walls heavy with memories. Donald sat behind a wide desk, the lamplight catching in his hair. He looked up, his eyes tracing every line of her face. "Close the door," he said quietly. She obeyed, heart thundering. He stood, moving around the desk until they were close enough for her to see the worry in his eyes, the longing on his lips. "You weren't meant to come here," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "You called me," she replied. He hesitated. "Do you regret last night?" She shook her head. "Do you?" He cupped her face, thumb brushing her cheek. "No, but I should." Sheila swallowed. "I'm tired of living by someone else's rules." Donald drew her closer, his forehead resting against hers. "So am I." They stood together in the hush, sharing breath, hearts beating in wild sync. For a long time, nothing else mattered. A noise broke the spell, the sound of voices outside, footsteps approaching. Donald pulled away, eyes hardening. "We have to be careful," he warned. "The house is full of eyes." Sheila nodded, stepping back, but the air between them sizzled with unfinished promises. That night, the household gathered in the kitchen to celebrate Charles the gardener's birthday. Laughter and music filled the room, the sharp edge of suspicion dulled by cake and shared memories. But Sheila felt the weight of every gaze, every laugh too loud, every silence too pointed. During the celebration, Mrs. Turner arrived, her presence turning warmth to frost. She fixed Sheila with a cool stare. "You seem different these days, Sheila. Have you found your place at last?" Sheila met her gaze, steady and unafraid. "I'm trying, ma'am." Mrs. Turner's eyes narrowed, searching for hidden meanings. "Be careful. The house is not as forgiving as it looks." After the party, as Sheila helped Jenny wash dishes, the older woman finally spoke. "Whatever you think is happening, be sure it's worth the trouble. The Turners protect their own, but they punish just as fiercely." Sheila's hands stilled in the water. "What if love doesn't follow the rules?" Jenny sighed. "Then you'd better be ready to fight for it." The days that followed were a blur of longing and risk. Sheila and Donald found stolen moments wherever they could. A whispered conversation in the wine cellar, a gentle touch as she passed by his office, a note left under her door. Each moment made the secret harder to hide, and the need to be honest harder to deny. It was Donald who finally broke. Late one night, he found Sheila in the garden, weeding a bed of wildflowers by moonlight. He crouched beside her, not caring if anyone saw. "I can't do this anymore," he confessed, voice ragged. "I can't pretend you don't matter." Sheila's breath caught. "You'll lose everything." He shook his head. "Let them take it. I'd rather lose the world than lose you." She stared at him, tears rising. "I'm not worth your ruin, Donald." He kissed her, slow and desperate, as if trying to prove her wrong. The moon lit their faces, turning the garden silver and wild. After, they sat together on the cold grass, hands entwined. "I'll protect you," Donald promised. Sheila leaned into him. "And I'll protect you." Inside, the staff's suspicion turned to certainty. Lila stopped speaking to her. Maria's concern became icy indifference. Only Jenny remained kind, slipping a warm roll into Sheila's hand one morning with a gentle, wordless warning in her eyes. The last straw came when Mrs. Turner cornered Donald in the main hall. Sheila heard the argument from behind the door. "You're ruining the family name," Mrs. Turner hissed. "You'll throw everything away for a girl who doesn't belong here." Donald's answer was clear and final. "She belongs with me, and if you can't accept that, maybe it's you who doesn't belong." The house trembled with the shock of his words. Donald found Sheila that night, his eyes shining with determination. "No more secrets," he said. "No more hiding." She nodded, knowing their lives would never be the same. In the coming days, the mansion's rules began to crumble, replaced by something more powerful: honesty, hope, and the fire of a love that refused to hide. And for the first time, Sheila felt not like a maid, but like a woman who had claimed her place in the world. No longer living by someone else's rules, she finally wrote her own. The days after Donald's declaration felt like walking a tightrope over a sea of sharp eyes. Word of their relationship spread faster than wildfire, passing through whispers in the kitchen, glances in the halls, and the silence that fell whenever Sheila entered a room. Every smile she gave, every chore she finished, was watched, measured, and judged. She tried to keep her routine, but nothing felt normal anymore. Maria avoided her now, bustling through the kitchen with her head down. Lila only spoke when she had to, her friendliness replaced with a wary distance. Charles the gardener nodded hello, but nothing more. Even Jenny, who had always offered guidance and comfort, grew quieter, her glances at Sheila long and worried. Donald became her anchor. He made no effort to hide their bond, greeting her with warmth at breakfast, inviting her to walk in the garden, sharing private smiles that once would have terrified her. The other staff noticed, of course, and so did the family. The real battle began when the Turner family gathered for a weekend reunion, a tradition marked by tense dinners and cold conversation. Sheila was asked to help with the service, and she entered the grand dining room with her heart pounding. Mrs. Turner sat at the head of the table, surrounded by relatives who wore their wealth like armor. Marion, Donald's sister, gave Sheila a polite nod, but the others didn't bother to hide their disdain. As Sheila refilled glasses, she caught snatches of conversation. "Unbelievable," muttered a cousin. "He's lost all sense," replied an uncle. Marion, sensing the storm, tried to change the subject, but Mrs. Turner was relentless. "My son is making choices that affect this entire family," she announced loudly, eyes fixed on Donald. "He risks everything for sentiment." Donald met her stare, calm and unbending. I risk nothing I can't live without. A chill swept through the room. Sheila's cheeks burned, but she kept her posture, refusing to shrink under their gaze. After dinner, as the family retreated to the parlor, Marion approached Sheila in the hallway. "I don't care who my brother loves," she said quietly. "But you need to know, this family protects its own, sometimes at any cost." Sheila nodded. "I never asked for protection, only respect." Marion's eyes softened a fraction. "Then fight for it. You'll need to." Outside, the staff muttered behind closed doors. Lila cornered Sheila in the pantry, voice trembling with equal parts envy and warning. "You think you're special now. They'll drop you the minute you cause real trouble." "I never wanted trouble," Sheila said. "I just want to be honest." Lila scoffed. "Honest doesn't survive in this house." Not for long. As the week went on, the tension broke into open hostility. Sheila found notes left in her room, some cruel, others pleading with her to leave for her own sake. Rumors spread that she was manipulating Donald, that she was after his money, that she would ruin him. She tried to ignore them, but each word chipped at her confidence. The worst moment came when she discovered her things scattered across the floor, her photo of her mother torn in half. She fell to her knees, gathering the pieces, heart aching. Jenny found her there, and for once, the older woman's mask broke. "This is wrong," Jenny whispered. "No one should be treated like this." "I'm sorry, Sheila." Sheila wiped her tears and straightened. "It won't break me." Donald noticed the change in her. That night, he found her in the library, sitting quietly among the books. "I should have seen this coming," he said, voice full of regret. "You shouldn't have to fight my battles." Sheila shook her head. "I choose this. I choose you." He reached for her hand, their fingers threading together. Then, "Let's stop hiding. Let's show them who we are." He took her to the family, to the staff, and spoke the truth with a clarity that left no room for argument. "Sheila is with me. She is part of this house, and anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me directly." Some turned away in disgust. Others looked surprised, even relieved. But the message was clear. Sheila was no longer just the help. That weekend, Donald hosted a public event, a garden charity gala attended by city officials, business partners, and the local press. He introduced Sheila to the guests as his partner, not his maid. The staff watched, stunned, as she stood at his side, her head high and her dress simple but elegant. Jealousy lingered, but a strange respect began to bloom in its place. Sheila met each guest with grace, never shrinking, never apologizing for who she was. Of course, the risks were real. Rumors in the papers, angry letters from family friends, Mrs. Turner's icy silence. The weight of public scrutiny pressed on them both. Donald's business partners questioned his judgment, some threatening to withdraw support. But Donald stood firm. "I built this house. I built this business. If I have to lose it to have you by my side, then so be it," he told Sheila, his voice never wavering. Sheila's heart ached with love and fear. She didn't want to be the reason for his ruin, but she couldn't deny the pride she felt. For once, she was chosen, not as a secret, but as a partner. The chapter closed on a night of hard-won peace. Sheila and Donald sat in the garden, the moon shining bright above them. "You're braver than you know," he told her. She smiled, laying her head on his shoulder. "So are you?" They were still afraid, of the future, of losing everything, of what tomorrow might bring. But together, they decided they could face whatever came. The mansion had never felt colder. Whispers now turned to open challenges. Mrs. Turner moved through the halls with renewed purpose, summoning staff for private conversations, hosting long meetings with Donald behind closed doors. Every portrait on the wall seemed to glare at Sheila, reminding her she was still an outsider in a house built for someone else's legacy. It all came to a head one morning when Donald was called into the formal dining room. Sheila, finishing chores in the hall, heard the sharp rise and fall of his mother's voice, a melody of accusation, warning, and bitterness. "She will not destroy this family," Mrs. Turner hissed. "You have a duty, Donald, to your father's memory, to our name. You are blinded by infatuation. Donald's answer was steady. My duty is to live honestly. If you can't accept Sheila, that is your burden, not mine. A door slammed. Silence rippled through the house. Minutes later, Mrs. Turner found Sheila in the kitchen, her tone ice cold. Pack your things. You will leave this house by noon. Sheila's hands shook, but she looked up and met the older woman's gaze. No. The single word rang out, bolder than she expected. Mrs. Turner's eyes narrowed. You don't get to decide. You never belonged here. Sheila set down her towel. Maybe not. But I love your son, and I'm not afraid to fight for him. The two women stared at each other, one with a lifetime of power, the other with nothing left to lose. Donald arrived just as Sheila was being escorted toward the door. He stopped the butler with a raised hand. She stays, he said firmly. Mrs. Turner's voice quivered with rage. Then you both go. Donald didn't blink. Then we both go. A hush swept through the staff who had gathered nearby. No one dared speak. Even Jenny, hands trembling, stood frozen by the doorway. For the first time, Donald turned to face everyone. This house is not worth more than my heart. If I can't live here with Sheila, I won't live here at all. He took Sheila's hand, and together they walked past the stunned crowd, through the front doors, into the sharp autumn air. They found themselves on the driveway, bags in hand, the sky low and grey above them. Where will we go? Sheila asked, voice soft but steady. Donald squeezed her hand. Anywhere that lets us be ourselves. Anywhere you feel safe. They rented a small apartment downtown, 2 rooms, old furniture, windows that rattled in the wind. It was nothing like the mansion, but it was theirs. Each night, they ate dinner side by side, laughing over takeout boxes, building a new life one quiet evening at a time. Yet the past was not so easily escaped. Newspapers ran stories about the Turner scandal. Friends called and left angry messages. Donald's phone filled with threats from former business partners and distant relatives. Still, he stood firm. But Sheila could feel his fear, buried beneath pride, masked by strength. She saw it in the way he stared out the window at night, in the restless way he paced, their small kitchen, in the rare moments when his voice caught with emotion. One evening, after a particularly rough day, Donald finally spoke his truth. When I was young, I tried to live up to everything my father wanted. I let him control me, my choices, my happiness. I never fought back. I was too scared to lose his approval. And when he died, I realized I'd never get it anyway. Sheila listened, her heart aching. You don't have to prove anything to anyone now, not even to me. He shook his head, eyes shining. That's why I love you. You see me for who I am, not for my name, not for my money. For me. She took his face in her hands, kissing him softly. That's all I've ever wanted. You, just as you are. Donald held her close, letting himself fall, truly fall, for the first time. Their new life was hard, but honest. They found work where they could. Donald at a small business, Sheila at a cafe. They shared chores, laughter, and every fear that came with starting over. Some nights, Donald woke from nightmares, haunted by old failures. But Sheila was always there, steady, loving, fierce. Jenny wrote them letters, sometimes slipping small bills inside, always ending with, "Remember, love is worth the risk." As the weeks passed, something shifted. Donald smiled more. Sheila's laughter filled their little home. The world outside was harsh, but together they built a haven out of trust and truth. One morning, Donald's mother appeared at their door. She looked older, smaller, her armor gone. "I was wrong," she whispered. "Love is not a weakness. You've built something real here. I'm proud of you both." Tears slipped down Sheila's cheeks as Donald hugged his mother for the first time in years. That night, Sheila and Donald sat on the balcony, arms wrapped around each other as the city sparkled below. Fire and fury had threatened to tear them apart, but in the end it had burned away everything false, leaving only what was real. They had lost a mansion, a name, and the comfort of old rules. But they had gained each other, and that, they realized, was worth every battle. The first weeks in their new life felt like freedom and exile at once. Gone were the marble halls and servants' whispers. Gone were the rules, the schedules, the weight of old family legacies. The tiny apartment echoed with possibility, but also with loneliness. Donald woke before sunrise every morning, sometimes restless, sometimes determined. He searched for work, but his name, once a golden ticket, was now a scandal in the business world. Rejection after rejection landed in his inbox. Former friends stopped returning calls. The world that had once bowed to his power now pretended he didn't exist. Sheila adjusted more easily. She was used to making do, to surviving with little. The cafe where she worked was humble but lively. Customers liked her quick smile and careful hands. Still, each night she felt the strain on Donald's face. His pride bruised, his confidence shaken. They held on to each other, but small cracks appeared. Sometimes Donald's silence lingered too long. Sometimes Sheila's worry kept her awake, counting coins, watching the rent deadline creep closer. Their laughter faded, replaced by sighs and quiet arguments about money, about dreams, about whether this risk had been worth it. One evening, Sheila arrived home to find Donald gone. A note sat on the table. Went for a walk. Need to clear my head. Love you. She waited hours, worry knotting her stomach. When he finally returned, his eyes were red, jaw tight. I saw Marion today, he said. She offered to help, said she could talk to some people, get me a job, if I went back, if I left you. Sheila's heart stung, but she forced herself to ask, "What did you say?" Donald knelt beside her, grabbing her hands. I told her, I'm not trading love for comfort, not again. Tears slipped down Sheila's face. I don't need the world, I just need you here. But the tension remained. The city felt hostile. Newspapers still whispered about the scandal. Strangers sometimes recognized Donald, their stares sharp and judging. At the cafe, customers gossiped when they thought Sheila couldn't hear. One rainy night, Donald came home late, soaked and silent. Sheila cooked his favorite soup, but he barely touched it. "Talk to me," she pleaded. He looked up, eyes hollow. "What if I never find work? What if we end up with nothing?" Sheila put her hands on his face, gentle but strong. "Then we build again. Together." He broke down, shoulders shaking. For the first time, he let himself fall apart in her arms. But even as they clung to each other, a new threat crept in. Jealousy. At the cafe, a new supervisor, Michael, started flirting with Sheila, praising her work, lingering near her station. Sheila brushed it off, but Donald noticed. The first time he stopped by for coffee, he watched Michael's smile linger on Sheila, a little too long. On the walk home, Donald's voice was strained. "You seem to get along with him." Sheila stopped. "Don't start. I'm here for you. No one else." Donald looked away. "I know. I'm just scared to lose you." She took his hand, fierce. "I chose you. I'll keep choosing you." But the seed of doubt was planted. The next day, Donald spent hours job hunting, returning home with new shadows in his eyes. Sheila felt the chill between them grow. One evening, Michael offered Sheila a ride home during a thunderstorm. She hesitated, then declined. When she arrived, soaked and shivering, Donald was waiting, worry twisted into anger. "Why didn't you take the ride? Why suffer for me?" Sheila set her bag down, frustration boiling over. "Because I don't want Michael. I want you, but I can't keep proving myself every day." They argued, loud, raw, exhausted. Both said things they regretted. Sheila ended up crying in the bathroom. Donald sat on the floor outside the door, back against the wood. In the quiet, he finally spoke. "I'm sorry. I'm scared of being left behind, Sheila. That's all I've ever known, people walking away." She opened the door, eyes red but voice steady. "I'm not going anywhere. But you have to trust me, or we'll break." He nodded, tears slipping down his face. After that night, they tried harder. Donald found odd jobs, delivering groceries, fixing computers, whatever paid. Sheila's hours at the cafe increased. The money was tight, but they managed. The biggest test came when Marion visited again, this time bringing an offer, one last chance for Donald to reclaim his old life. "Come home," she pleaded. "There are people who will forgive you. Start over, for your sake, for Father's legacy." Donald listened. He even considered it. But at the end of the day, he sat with Sheila in their cramped kitchen and chose her. "I'm done living for other people," he said. "My father's legacy is over. I want to build my own with you." The decision cost them friends and family, but it solidified something deeper. That night, for the first time in weeks, Sheila and Donald made love without fear or sadness, only gratitude, only hope. Still, the wounds lingered. Love alone wasn't always enough to chase away doubt and pain. But as autumn faded into winter, Sheila and Donald discovered something powerful, even shattered, they could build again. Piece by piece, with honesty and forgiveness, they found their way forward. They had risked everything and lost so much, but in the raw, open space that loss created, they found what mattered most, each other. Winter settled over the city with icy certainty, but inside the small apartment, warmth began to return. The wounds between Sheila and Donald didn't disappear overnight. They healed slowly, first as scabs, then as faint scars that no longer ached at every touch. Forgiveness became a daily practice. Some mornings, Donald would wake and reach for Sheila, and she would turn into his arms, holding on as if reminding them both that love had not abandoned them. Donald worked long hours, odd jobs, construction, fixing things for neighbors who sometimes paid only in meals. He stopped comparing his new life to the mansion or his father's standards. He focused on what he could build, not what he had lost. Sheila noticed the change in his smile, the way it became more real, less haunted by what-ifs. Sheila's hours at the cafe increased as Christmas neared. The owner offered her a small raise, and regulars left bigger tips, grateful for her gentle attention. One elderly woman, Mrs. Peterson, took a special interest in Sheila, inviting her to dinner and slipping homemade cookies into her coat pocket. Sheila accepted the kindness, her heart softening with each new gesture. One night, after a long day, Donald surprised Sheila with a picnic on the floor of their apartment. He'd bought bread, cheese, apples, and a bottle of cheap wine. He laid out a blanket and lit a candle in an empty jelly jar. "Remember our first night together?" he asked, pouring her a glass. Sheila smiled, touched by the memory. "I was so scared. I thought I'd lose everything." He took her hand. "You gave me everything." They ate, laughed, and shared stories, their voices echoing in the small space, weaving new memories. Later, Donald played old songs on his phone, and they danced barefoot across the cracked linoleum. For the first time in months, Sheila felt free. No mansion, no rules, only love. As weeks passed, their routine grew stronger. Donald took pride in his work, no matter how small. Sheila brought home fresh bread from the cafe, flowers from Mrs. Peterson's garden. They celebrated small victories, a paid bill, a new coat, the day Donald's phone finally stopped ringing with threats from his old life. One afternoon, Donald met Sheila after her shift, a bouquet of wildflowers in hand. "Let's get out of the city this weekend," he suggested. "Just you and me. No past, no expectations." They took a train to the countryside, walking hand in hand down muddy trails, breathing air sharp with pine and hope. They lay on the grass, staring at clouds, talking about dreams that now felt possible again. That night, in a cozy bed and breakfast, they made love slowly, no urgency, no fear. Each touch was a promise, each whisper a vow. They talked about the future, about maybe starting their own business, about finding a place with a garden, about family, someday when the world felt safe. Back in the city, their bond was unbreakable. Donald defended Sheila at every turn, refusing to let old ghosts haunt their present. He reached out to Marion, apologizing for past anger, and invited her to dinner. Marion, seeing her brother's peace, finally accepted Sheila with genuine warmth. At the cafe, Michael, the supervisor who once stirred trouble, was transferred. The owner promoted Sheila to assistant manager, recognizing her leadership and kindness. With spring on the horizon, Donald and Sheila started saving for a better apartment. They budgeted together, dreaming about paint colors, window views, and the day they'd never worry about the rent again. One rainy afternoon, Donald proposed, not with a diamond or fanfare, but with a handwritten letter left on Sheila's pillow. In it, he wrote of every risk, every loss, and every hope she'd brought into his life. He asked for her forever, not as a grand gesture, but as a quiet, unwavering promise. Sheila found him waiting in the kitchen, heart in his eyes. "Yes," she whispered, tears shining. They hugged, laughter mingling with tears. Outside, the city still moved at its own frantic pace, but inside, time slowed to the steady beat of two hearts, mended and whole. They had rebuilt their love from the ground up. Not perfect, not easy, but true. The rest, they knew, was still unwritten. Spring came slowly, with pale sunshine and the scent of fresh rain. Sheila and Donald marked the changing season with a sense of renewal, a quiet excitement neither dared name at first. They had weathered storms that would have broken other couples. Now, every ordinary morning felt like a small victory, making coffee together, reading the news, planning their week. They saved every extra penny. Sheila's new role at the cafe meant more hours and a small but steady raise. Donald worked for a local carpenter, learning new skills, earning respect for his reliability and honesty. On weekends, he and Sheila strolled through neighborhoods, pointing out houses with wide porches or overgrown gardens, imagining what their own home might look like one day. With every month, their dream took clearer shape. They built a future fund in a glass jar on the kitchen table, dropping coins and spare bills inside, celebrating every milestone. They read books about small business, talked about opening a flower shop or bakery, something. They could run together, building a legacy not of wealth, but of love and hard work. Marion visited often, her friendship a healing bridge to Donald's old life. Sometimes she brought family photos or stories from childhood, reminding Donald of happy times before grief and expectation hardened his father. Marion saw the man her brother had become, steadier, softer, more true to himself. She and Sheila grew close, united by their love for Donald and their belief in new beginnings. One bright Saturday, Donald and Sheila signed the lease on a sunlit apartment with a view of a tiny park. It was old but clean, with room for a table by the window and enough sunlight for Sheila's plants. They painted the walls pale blue, hung thrift store curtains, and filled the kitchen with laughter and the aroma of Sheila's favorite bread. That first night in their new place, they shared dinner on the floor. No furniture yet, just a picnic blanket and candlelight. Donald raised his glass, to us, to leaving the past behind, and to whatever comes next. Sheila clinked her glass against his. To every day we get to choose each other. The new apartment brought new challenges. There were bills, repairs, long work days, but their home became a place of peace, books piled by the bed, fresh, flowers on the table, quiet music as they made dinner side by side. In the evenings, they planned for the future. Sometimes they argued, voices rising and falling, but they always made up before bed. Each disagreement taught them more about each other and about the kind of love that listens, forgives, and learns. As spring turned to summer, they hosted friends from the cafe, neighbors, and Marion. Laughter spilled into the hallway, the apartment alive with conversation and hope. Donald found himself surrounded by people who valued him for who he was, not what he had lost. One afternoon, Sheila received a letter from a local college. Her application to nursing school had been accepted. She cried in Donald's arms, her oldest dream suddenly real. "We'll make it work," he promised, wiping her tears. "I'll take on extra work. I want this for you, for us." Sheila started classes that fall, juggling work, study, and home life with Donald's unwavering support. The future felt busy, sometimes overwhelming, but always worth it. Donald grew into his new self, more confident, more present. He loved Sheila not only for her resilience, but for the way she helped him rediscover his own strength. They cheered each other's victories, held each other through failures, and never stopped talking about the next step in their journey. That winter, as the first snow fell, Donald knelt on the rug in their living room, holding out a simple gold ring. "I don't have a mansion. I don't have fortunes to offer," he said. "But I have love, and a promise to build with you, every day." Sheila smiled, tears streaming down her cheeks. "That's all I've ever wanted." Yes. They married in the park beneath a blooming tree, with Marion, Jenny, and friends from their new world as witnesses. There were no fancy gowns or limousines, just joy, honest vows, and the peace that comes from knowing you fought for your happiness. As Donald slipped the ring on Sheila's finger, he whispered, "Thank you for breaking the rules, and for breaking me free." They celebrated late into the night, surrounded by laughter, love, and the certainty that their future would be built not on money or legacy, but on faith, hope, and each other. For the first time, Sheila and Donald stood side by side, not as master and maid, but as partners, equal, unbreakable, and ready for all that life might bring. Years later, sunlight poured through the windows of a house built with love. The scent of fresh bread drifted from the kitchen, laughter echoed down the halls, and the walls, once bare, were lined with photos of small moments that mattered. Sheila's graduation from nursing school, Donald, his first woodworking project, quiet dinners, birthdays, simple mornings shared in peace. Sheila and Donald's life was not perfect, but it was real. Every day they made choices to honor the love that had carried them from marble mansions and lonely corridors to this place, a home bright with color, warmth, and welcome. Sheila worked as a nurse, known for her kindness and her fierce loyalty to her patients. She had fought hard for every credential, every skill, and every ounce of respect. At work, she was a leader, a comfort, a hope for others facing their own storms. Donald had grown his small carpentry business into a local favorite. His hands, once used to signing contracts, now shaped wood into art and furniture. He took pride in every chair, table, and shelf he built, pouring his past pain into pieces meant to last. People came not just for his skill, but for his honesty and calm. Their home became a place of gathering. Friends old and new stopped by for coffee, advice, or just the warmth of their laughter. Marion visited often, bringing stories and joy. Even Jenny came sometimes, settling into the kitchen with Sheila to bake and reminisce. Sometimes Mrs. Turner would send a card, a quiet apology, and a wish for happiness. The past had softened for everyone, leaving forgiveness where once there was only pain. On their anniversary, Donald took Sheila's hand and led her to the garden, a patch of earth, blooming with wildflowers, a tribute to the night they had chosen each other above all else. "Do you ever miss that old life?" Sheila asked, watching the sunlight dance in his eyes. Donald shook his head, smiling. "I miss nothing that kept me from you." She leaned into him, grateful for the battles that had taught them strength. "If I've learned anything, it's that happiness never comes from following someone else's rules." He kissed her forehead. "We made our own path. That's our legacy." They stood in silence, content in the peace they had fought to create. The world outside their gate still spun with news, scandals, and storms. But inside their home, love was steady, simple, and unbreakable. Neighbors sometimes asked how they'd done it, how two people from such different worlds found something worth keeping. Sheila always answered, "Love is a choice, every day. It's the courage to risk your heart, to forgive, to build and rebuild, even when it hurts." Donald added, "You don't have to have a mansion or a perfect past. You just need to hold on when it matters most." Their story traveled further than they ever imagined, shared by friends, neighbors, and the families they touched through their work. People came to their home for advice, for comfort, for proof that joy was possible after loss. On quiet evenings, Sheila would write in her journal, recalling the lessons she wanted to pass on. Don't let fear decide your fate. Don't let anyone define your worth. Fight for happiness, no matter how many times you have to start over. Love, the real kind, always asks for everything, but it gives back more. Years from now, they hoped, their children or grandchildren would read those words and remember that real legacies are built not from gold or power, but from choices made with the heart. As the sun set on another ordinary day, Sheila and Donald sat on their porch, hands intertwined, watching the world in peace. They had broken every rule that tried to keep them apart. They had built a life together, messy, beautiful, and lasting. And they knew, without a doubt, that the best risk they'd ever taken was daring to love, no matter the cost. If Sheila and Donald's story moved you, share your favorite lesson from their journey in the comments below. Would you risk everything for love, even if it meant breaking all the rules? Don't forget, like this video, subscribe to Mr. Leonardo Stories, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new story that inspires you. Your support helps us create more unforgettable stories every week. Thank you for watching. See you in the next story.